Tonight, you're not here to change history or make a fortune. You're not an agent of the crown or a dashing hero with a suitcase full of plans. No, tonight, you're just another wanderer, equal parts restless and reckless, who took a wrong turn somewhere between hope and habit. You've landed in Colonial Shanghai, a city split into fragments by foreign flags and old rivalries, where every street smells like ambition, secrets, and something a little sweeter drifting on the night air. You won't see it coming, but pretty soon your pockets will be empty, your friends will be faces in the fog, and every breath will taste a bit more like smoke than freedom. Most of all, you'll learn that this city never really lets you leave. Not with your soul, not with your memory, not even with your name. Welcome to the night shift. Let's get lost together. You step off the ship and onto the trembling boards of the Shanghai dock, boots scraping against ancient wood, slick with the residue of river and rain. Behind you, the ferry still rocks, crewmen shouting in rough dialects as crates are offloaded, but already the city's breath is thick in your lungs. There's a strange sweetness to the air, a perfume spun from coal smoke, river rot, and something faintly floral, curling at the edge of your senses. It's both promise and warning, a taste of what lies ahead. Shanghai sprawls before you, neither truly Eastern nor Western, but something stitched together by ambition, hunger, and the endless traffic of goods and people. Towers squat and foreign, painted in flaking British reds and French creams, stand shoulder to shoulder with low Chinese rooftops, their tiles pressed together like old fans. Flags flap listlessly in the humid air, British, French, American, each a reminder that this city belongs to no one and everyone, and newcomers are measured not by their dreams, but by what they can barter, steal, or lose. You clutch your bag tighter, feeling the weight of every hope you packed for the journey. This was supposed to be a beginning, a place where the past fades and new luck is forged with the rising sun. But already, as you follow the crowd down the dock and into a street alive with movement, you sense something gnawing at the edges of that idea. Coolies push past, straining under bales of silk or tea, their faces drawn with the patience of people used to being ignored. Merchants in crisp jackets and battered shoes hawk everything from coins to candies to paper fans, their voices blending into a tapestry of sales pitches and private jokes. The traffic swirls. Rickshaws pulled by sweat-shining men dart around sedan chairs where pale faces peer out with uneasy curiosity. Carriages bounce over cobbles, splattering mud onto your trousers, and through it all, the distant blast of a cannon from a British gunboat echoes downriver. You flinch. No one else does. Here, authority is measured in decibels and distance, and you are neither loud nor established enough to draw attention. A narrow alley beckons, promising a shortcut to the boarding houses clustered in the international settlement. You step in, boots echoing off wet stone, and feel the city's pulse change. Voices turn sharper, laughter slips into argument, and the shadows lean in, thick and suspicious. Above, laundry flutters from lines strung between windows. Children with the eyes of old souls dart underfoot, shouting in a mix of tongues you can almost, but not quite, understand. Somewhere nearby, a woman shouts from an upper window, her tone sharp with accusation or heartbreak or both. You press onward, refusing to let the city sense your unease. Your hand strays to your pocket, checking for the little pouch of silver coins that represents all you have left after the voyage. You remind yourself you're just passing through, that this tiny mildew-scented room you're about to rent will soon be replaced by something finer. Yet, as you enter the boarding house, with its peeling paint and iron railings that try and fail to mimic the gentility of Europe, It's clear you've stepped into a world where upward movement is a matter of negotiation, luck, and the willingness to bend. Inside, you are greeted by a landlord whose name you immediately forget, something British, spoken with the clipped certainty of a man used to being obeyed. He gives you a key, takes your coins, and barely glances as you trudge up the narrow staircase. The room smells of damp and dust, the paper on the walls curled at the edges, the window offering a view of nothing but the alley you just walked. You sit on the edge of the sagging mattress and listen to the city breathing. Horns, footsteps, the distant crash of water against stone. Shanghai, you tell yourself, is a city that devours those who wander without purpose. The streets outside are alive, not with the comfort of a community, but with the urgent need to survive another hour. Every face you pass is etched with calculation. What can you offer? What can you pay? How much trouble might you cause? Here, nobody asks where you come from. They're too busy watching where you might be going, and who you'll inconvenience on the way. Still, there's a thrill to it, this sense of drifting on the edge of something vast and unknowable. You take to wandering at night, following the glow of gas lamps that flicker with nervous energy. In some streets, the lamps are British, tall, stiff, and always a little out of place. In others, the trees lining the road are French, their leaves whispering above doorways hung with crimson lanterns. Then, as if by magic, you find yourself pressed between crowds speaking only Chinese, where the air hums with stories too old for outsiders to understand. It's here, in the heart of the city, that you first notice the smoke. Not the coal or the river vapor, but something else, denser, sweeter, lingering long after the source has moved on. You catch glimpses of doorways half open, shadows shifting behind silk curtains, the faint click of pipes, and the gentle exhale of someone searching for relief. You wonder at first what draws so many to these dim rooms, why the city seems to hold its breath as you pass. You'll learn, in time. For now, you just keep moving, pulled forward by the promise of escape, the illusion that tomorrow will bring something better. The nights grow longer. The city presses in, its boundaries both physical and invisible. You hear laughter, cries, and music drifting from places you don't know how to find. Your footsteps echo on the stones, and you begin to realize that here, in Shanghai, you are not the main character of your own story. You are simply a piece on someone else's board, valuable only so long as you have something to offer, expendable the moment you run out. Yet the city seduces you all the same. In the swirl of foreign languages, the dance of light and shadow, and the mingled sense of spice and smoke, you sense the possibility of reinvention, a place where old failures can be left behind, and new mistakes acquired in their place. Each morning brings the same question. Will you find your fortune, or will the city find a way to consume you before you can try? You cling to your hopes, naive and stubborn, and tell yourself you are different from those who came before. But as Shanghai settles its weight on your shoulders, as the air thickens and the days blend into each other, you begin to understand the truth whispered in every shadow. This city does not care who you were or who you want to become. It only knows how to take and to keep taking until even your memories fade into the haze. And so, with every cautious step, you vanish a little more. Another arrival on the edge of the map. Another drifter swallowed whole by a city built on the bones of the hopeful. It's easy, at first, to believe you'll be the exception. Shanghai has a way of offering just enough glitter to make hope seem reasonable, even as the cracks beneath your feet widen with every step. You tell yourself you're clever, resourceful, a quick learner, with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The city, for a time, even lets you keep this illusion. Days pass in a whirl of unfamiliar faces, broken promises, and new possibilities that vanish as quickly as they appear. You wander the avenues, notebook in hand, mapping out opportunities only you can see. A secret path to prosperity in a city built to erase such dreams. You learn the geography of survival, not from books, but from watching the people who live by instinct alone. There's a certain choreography to the way Shanghai moves. Vendors set up and tear down in minutes, shifting with the tides of commerce and patrols. Beggars melt into the alleys when foreign boots clatter too close. Girls in bright silk and boys in faded cotton appear from nowhere, exchanging rumors, threats, and jokes you can't quite decipher. You pretend not to notice when money changes hands, or when someone vanishes into a side street and doesn't return. The city rewards those who mind their own business and punishes those who don't. For a while, you're content to watch, to drift, to play the role of silent observer. Each evening you convince yourself you're learning, getting closer to the secret that will let you rise above the fray. Your optimism is stubborn, buoyed by stories of fortunes made overnight and newcomers who found favor with the right merchant or the right official. You hear tales in the smoky corners of taverns, stories spun over cheap gin and cracked teacups. A man who bought land just before the right road was built. A woman who charmed a British banker and retired rich. Each story sparkles with the promise of easy reward, and you collect them like lucky coins, ignoring the fine print that's written in other people's losses. But even as you chase these stories, the city begins to reveal its teeth. What looks like opportunity is often just a mask for someone else's advantage, a chessboard where you never see all the pieces. You pay too much for food, then too much for lodging, then again for a guide who disappears before the sun is up. The city keeps its own kind of tally, and your silver dwindles, vanishing almost faster than you can count. You realize too late that every transaction comes with an invisible tax for being new, for being hopeful, for believing the rules are written down somewhere you can read them. Your first real setback comes quietly. A job promised, translating for a British trader, turns out to be a single afternoon spent counting crates in a storeroom. The pay is half what you were told, and the trader's smile fades the moment you ask for the rest. You walk away with empty pockets and a new understanding. Shanghai rewards those who take, not those who wait to be given. By the next week, you've abandoned the notion of honest work, or at least work as you knew it back home. Here, everything is negotiation. A favor for a secret, a tip for an introduction, a silence bought or sold as needed. The more you try to fit in, the more the city pushes back. You dress like the locals, learn a few phrases of Mandarin, and even try to adopt the wary, casual stance of those born to the chaos. Still, your accent marks you as an outsider. Your skin, your posture, your hesitation, they all betray you in a glance. Sometimes, late at night, you wonder if it's worth the effort. If you're destined to be an observer, forever watching through a window fogged with other people's breath. Yet you persist, fueled by the same spark that brought you here. Each defeat only makes you more determined to find a way through. You begin to take risks, small at first, cutting through a forbidden alley, striking up a conversation with a stranger at a gambling table, following a rumor to the far side of town. Sometimes you win. A hot meal, a safe place to sleep, a secret passed in confidence. More often, you lose. The cost is rarely measured in money, but in dignity, time, and the gradual erosion of your certainty. Still, every morning, you convince yourself tomorrow will be different. You polish your shoes, straighten your jacket, and set out with the optimism of someone who has not yet been truly broken. The city meets you with a crooked grin, daring you to try again, to trust again, to keep chasing the shimmer at the edge of the horizon. And you do. You cling to your illusions, stubbornly believing that you are building something, when in truth it is the city that is shaping you, bending your spirit to fit the narrow gaps left by others' ambitions. There are moments, flashes really, when you catch your reflection in a shop window and don't recognize the person staring back. The optimism is still there, but now it's tinged with something else. A thin patina of doubt, of exhaustion, of the quiet realization that you are not immune. The city is teaching you, lesson by lesson, that dreams are a kind of currency here, spent quickly, replaced slowly, and never quite as valuable as you imagined. And still, you keep moving, one foot in front of the other, drawn by the promise of a new beginning, even as you sense the quicksand beneath your boots.
You tell yourself you are only passing through this stage, that soon the city will reward your persistence with a breakthrough. But as the days grow shorter and the nights grow heavier, you begin to suspect the truth. Shanghai is not a city that forgives mistakes. It is a place that remembers every weakness, every foolish gamble, every promise you failed to keep. And it does not care how hard you try or how much you believe. It only cares that you are here, feeding the machine, another hopeful face in a crowd of thousands who thought they could beat the odds. The city does not mock your illusions. It simply waits for them to run out. Shanghai is not a city so much as a puzzle whose pieces never quite fit. Every step you take, you cross invisible lines, some old, some new, some enforced by soldiers with polished boots, and some by nothing more than a glance that lasts a second too long. The city has been carved and recarved by treaties, by wars, by the ambitions of men who never set foot here except to sign their names and take their profits. You can sense these boundaries before you even understand them, the way the language on the street shifts mid-sentence, the sudden change in the smell of frying oil, or the style of hats worn by men who hurry past, their eyes sliding over you as if you might upset the delicate balance they pretend to maintain. The British have their enclave, and you know it before anyone tells you. The buildings stand heavier, the bricks imported and stubborn in the humidity. Signs in English declare names like Empire House and Victoria Exchange in peeling gold letters. The streets are wider, swept by men in faded uniforms, and the gas lamps cast a harsh white light that makes every shadow look like a trespass. Here, rules are written and rewritten by people who think they're temporary kings, sipping tea on verandas and arguing over the price of things they've never made or touched. Drift a little farther, and the world tilts again. The French concession sprawls in elegant chaos, avenues lined with sycamores, shops selling wine and silk, laughter rising above the clatter of carriages. Everything here feels less rigid, less severe, but no less exclusive. The French pride themselves on a certain insouciance, as if they can ignore the commerce that funds their comforts, as long as they can outdrink, outsmoke, and outlast their rivals. Their parties are loud, their scandals frequent, and their police a little too busy with paperwork to intervene until the shouting stops. Somewhere between the grand gestures of empire, the Americans linger, always ready to sell a gun or a Bible, always watching for the angle that everyone else has missed. They have not yet built much, just a cluster of new buildings bristling with flagpoles and optimism. But their presence hums, a promise and a threat, as if they're waiting for the city to choose a side. Beyond these foreign islands lies the real Shanghai, restless and unconquered. It presses up against the borders, dense with life and noise and the unending churn of hope and hunger. Here, the Chinese streets throb with color and scent, incense curling from doorways, garlic sizzling in woks,
voices rising and falling in 100 dialects. The buildings lean together like old friends and co-conspirators, the alleys crowded with traders, beggars, students, and shopkeepers who've learned to adapt to whatever flag is flying overhead. There is a kind of freedom in these neighborhoods, but it is the freedom of necessity, a survival built on quick thinking and the knowledge that every privilege is temporary. Yet even here, division is inescapable. The police walk in pairs, eyes sharp for trouble that threatens order, but rarely for injustice that hides in plain sight. In the foreign settlements, laws are a comfort, a shield for those who look the part and speak the language of those in power. In the Chinese districts, rules are more fluid, negotiated in back rooms and paid for with favors, or simply ignored when no one is watching. The currency of the city is not just silver, but appearance, affiliation, and luck. Where you eat, whom you greet, what language you use when you bargain for rice or rent, all mark you as belonging to someone's world or as an outsider to everyone's. Sometimes you are both in a single day, and the experience leaves you lightheaded, aware of just how precarious your place here really is. As days pass, you learn to move between these worlds as carefully as if you were crossing a river at flood. You keep your head down in the British Quarter, nod politely in the French cafes, and relax only in the teeming markets where no one cares who you are as long as you can pay. Each district offers its own rewards and dangers, its own version of safety, but none of them feel like home. Sometimes, when the wind shifts, the city's smells blend, perfume and sweat, coal smoke and incense, a whiff of opium that lingers even in places where it is never spoken aloud. The boundaries grow fuzzy at night, and the streets blur into each other, but the divisions always return with the dawn. You start to see that Shanghai is a city not of walls, but of veils, thin enough to see through, thick enough to keep everyone apart. Yet beneath the surface, everyone is bound together by the same machine, by trade, by appetite, by a history written in other people's ledgers. Each quarter is a mirror reflecting a different version of the same hunger. Some seek profit, some seek pleasure, some simply seek escape. But whatever their desires, the city has found a way to monetize them, to sort and resell them, to keep everyone moving just fast enough to forget who benefits from the game. And as you drift from one boundary to the next, you begin to realize that the true city is not built from bricks or borders, but from a network of invisible debts and unspoken rules. Shanghai is a map whose lines keep shifting, a story rewritten every day in a dozen tongues. And you, with your borrowed optimism and vanishing coin, are just one more character trying to find a place before the pieces are moved again. Night in Shanghai falls suddenly, as if someone has drawn a curtain across the sky, and the city's true nature leaks out from the seams. In daylight, the contradictions are half hidden behind hurried routines and blunted by the clang of commerce. But darkness brings everything into sharper relief. You walk through streets that no longer seem familiar, senses pricked by the knowledge that what was safe an hour ago now asks for caution. Here, the city reveals its secrets in the flicker of lanterns and the shifting perfume that rides every breeze. A heady blend of jasmine and fish, sweat and incense, hope and resignation. And always, curling beneath it all, the unmistakable sweetness of something forbidden. You follow the narrow lanes where shadows lean against crumbling walls, and figures slip through doorways in silence. The deeper you go, the more you sense you're being watched, not out of malice, but out of weary calculation. Here, trust is a luxury few can afford, and every face is a riddle. Shopkeepers sell delicacies beside patent remedies, charms beside knives,
and everyone is fluent in the art of the sidelong glance. A beggar offers you a paper lotus, his smile cracked and knowing. A child in oversized slippers tries to sell you a copper ring, eyes darting past you for someone more likely to buy.
You see, now, what the guidebooks never mention, how nothing in this city is quite what it seems. Behind the velvet drapes of a tea house, gamblers laugh a little too loudly, their piles of coins growing and shrinking with every roll of the dice. Just beyond the light, a girl with sharp eyes and nimble hands relieves an unwary merchant of his pocket watch, vanishing before he even feels the loss. In an alley, a preacher's words mingle with the coughs of an old man propped against a barrel, his pipe hanging loosely from fingers stained dark by habit. There is no judgment here, only a sort of practical acceptance, a knowledge that survival means compromise. But it is the smoke that truly marks your passage into the city's heart. It clings to the night air, rich and persistent, carrying with it the lure of escape. You catch glimpses of it wafting from open windows, swirling lazily beneath red lanterns, trailing behind those who move with practiced purpose. There is something both inviting and unsettling about the scent, the way it softens the world's edges and quiets the restless chatter in your head. It is neither wholly pleasant nor wholly unpleasant, only unforgettable, a signal that something vital and dangerous is always happening just out of sight. You begin to notice how the city organizes itself around this presence. The wealthy enjoy their pleasures in hidden parlors draped with foreign silks, pipes passed from hand to hand as laughter fades into languid conversation. In the humbler districts, smoke seeps from back rooms where men and women huddle on straw mats, sharing both warmth and silence. No one is truly alone, yet everyone is isolated by the hunger that draws them to this ritual. Even those who claim disdain for such indulgences speak of it with a mixture of contempt and longing, as if they too have felt the pull. One night, curiosity leads you close to one of these dens. The entrance is nondescript, a chipped wooden door beneath a lantern, the light soft and patient. You pause, pretending to study the wares of a fruit seller, but your eyes linger on the steady stream of visitors. Some are young, others impossibly old. Some wear suits, others rags. All carry the same hollow look, the same urgency disguised as nonchalance. You watch as they disappear inside, one after another, like moths drawn to a flame they do not expect to survive. You realize as the air grows thick with dusk and the lamps flare to life that you are not immune to the city's invitations. Already, the smoke has found its way into your clothes and hair, weaving its story into your own. You taste it in the back of your throat when you speak, feel it clinging to your skin when you lie down at night. In moments of stillness, it seems to fill the room, mingling with your thoughts, making it harder to remember what you hoped to find here. Yet, for all the city's deceptions, there is a strange honesty in the way Shanghai wears its vices. There are no clear boundaries between virtue and temptation, no dividing line between success and surrender. You see men who conduct business by day vanishing into the dens at dusk, returning with eyes that betray how much they've lost and how little it matters. You see women who laugh at foreign jokes and weep behind closed doors, their burdens made lighter for a few precious hours. The city's contrasts are not accidents, but a system, an agreement that everyone, in the end, is chasing comfort in their own way. The deeper you wander, the more these truths begin to settle into your bones. You move with greater caution, but also with a growing sense of complicity. Every new smell, every stolen glance, every brush with something unspeakably beautiful or ugly is a lesson in survival. And always, as you make your way back to your narrow room, the smoke lingers, reminding you that, in Shanghai, even the air conspires to keep you dreaming, even when the dreams have turned to shadows. It happens slowly, almost without your noticing. At first, you believe the city runs on silver and silk, on the frantic exchange of goods along the Bund and in the noisy chaos of the markets. The port bustles day and night, crates of tea and porcelain shuffled with the practiced efficiency of people who have grown rich on the rhythms of trade. But as you settle into Shanghai's uneasy embrace, it becomes clear that something else flows through its veins, a currency more potent and more corrosive than any coin or gem. You start to see the patterns, how the city moves not just for profit, but for relief. Beneath the deals made in brightly lit offices and the bargains struck in the shadows, another kind of transaction unfolds, a relentless cycle of hunger and fulfillment, of craving and brief escape. And everywhere you look, the same symbol of this secret economy, a small lacquered box, a velvet pouch, a pipe polished by countless hands. Opium. The word itself hovers on the edge of every conversation, spoken with the resignation of something inevitable. You see its traces in the ledger books of foreign merchants, masked as medicinal imports or exotic botanicals. You hear it in the quiet jokes traded by dock workers, in the pointed silence between two men who have seen too many friends vanish into the smoky dens. Even the city's architecture bends around this hidden commerce, mansions and counting houses built on the slow ruin of those whose only wealth now is oblivion. At street level, you watch the system at work. Couriers slip through alleys with bundles wrapped in oil paper, their faces impassive. A single crate disappears from a warehouse one day and appears the next in a backroom parlor, its contents divided and measured like treasure. No one questions the process. Everyone gets their share, from the men who ship the product across oceans to the policemen who are paid to look the other way. It is a structure as reliable as any clock, as impersonal as a factory line, and far more profitable. The official story, of course, is different. Publicly, the city leaders and foreign consuls speak of commerce, of trade agreements, of the grand benefits brought by connection and exchange. They ignore the fact that opium moves faster than any legal shipment, that fortunes are made and lost not in the counting houses, but in the haze of the dens. It is easier to pretend that the problem is personal, a failing of character, a weakness of the flesh, than to admit the city itself is addicted to the profits. So the lie becomes another kind of currency, traded as freely as the smoke itself. You learn that respectability here is not measured by what you do, but by how well you hide the evidence. Men who rage against vice in public hold private investments in the very dens they denounce. Clergy who offer sermons against temptation collect rent from properties used for the trade. Reformers shout for change in pamphlets, risking their own safety, but the tide is too strong for anyone to swim against for long. The truth, once seen, cannot be unlearned. You walk past a building whose marble columns were bought with the suffering of hundreds, and the weight of it settles in your chest. It's there in the careful luxury of a colonial official's dinner, in the laughter that floats above the city's rot, in the careful avoidance of the gaze of the desperate. The city does not build upward with its wealth, it insulates outward, erecting thicker walls, wider verandas, imported pianos, all designed to keep the outside at bay, to hide the cost from those who benefit. You begin to notice the fallout. Bodies curled beneath awnings, faces too thin, eyes too tired, the slow shuffling gait of people who have learned that hope is not a daily necessity. And yet the trade continues, unchecked, woven into every part of daily life. If you want to understand what keeps Shanghai moving, you only have to follow the crates stamped with English letters and Indian seals. The money always moves upward, away from the hands that truly pay the price. In rare, unguarded moments, someone will admit what everyone knows. The opium trade is not a side effect, but the foundation.
It is not shameful, but essential, at least to those whose fortunes are measured in other people's losses. You realize, with a jolt, that here despair itself has value, and the city will never run out of buyers. It is this hidden commerce, the relentless trade in temporary relief, in numbness, in oblivion, that holds Shanghai together. Silver changes hands, ledgers are balanced, but the real business is measured in what is lost, not what is gained. And as you watch the city pulse with another night's transactions, you understand that you have stepped into an economy where ruin is not an accident, but a necessity, an unspoken contract signed by every soul who walks these streets. History in Shanghai is never just a collection of dates and treaties. It lives in the air, in every stone beneath your feet, in the uneasy truce between yesterday's violence and today's commerce. Walk along the river at sunrise, and you can almost see the outlines of old gunboats etched on the water's surface. Hear the echo of cannons that once decided the price of freedom for millions. The city's past is not distant. It lingers, sharp as the tang of opium in the back of your throat, a memory disguised as routine. The British were not the first to covet Shanghai, but they were the most thorough. With the cold logic of empire, they saw in this chaotic harbor a perfect node for trade, a place to unload not only goods, but ideas, laws, and the invisible weight of authority. The plan was never about partnership. It was always about leverage, about making sure that the city's future would be mortgaged to the priorities of a distant crown. Opium became their instrument of choice. It began quietly, a trickle of shipments from the fields of Bengal and Bihar, poppies cultivated and processed under the watchful eye of British agents. What started as a minor trade grew quickly into something monstrous. By the time the Qing government realized the scale of the crisis, the city was already saturated. When officials finally tried to intervene, seizing and burning crates of the narcotic, it was too late. British merchants cried foul, and suddenly the logic of profit demanded war.
The First Opium War unfolded like a nightmare. One side armed with muskets in desperation, the other with iron hulls and the certainty that money could buy any outcome. When the dust settled, Shanghai was pried open, its defenses battered and its laws rewritten. The city became a treaty port, its autonomy carved away by foreign signatures and diplomatic smiles. Reparations flowed in silver, but the real price was sovereignty, paid again and again with each new concession, each new district ceded to a different foreign power. Yet the lesson was not learned. When the Qing attempted once more to curb the trade, another war followed, bloodier, even more cynical. British gunboats returned, this time with French flags beside them. They burned archives, looted palaces, forced new treaties that granted the victors not only the right to sell opium, but the authority to govern, to tax, to walk Shanghai's streets as if the city were a prize won at auction. The logic of empire was self-perpetuating. Defend the trade by any means and use the spoils to fund even greater expansion. From that point on, Shanghai's fate was sealed. The city was partitioned in earnest, each foreign power laying claim to a slice of its flesh, each agreement another layer of bureaucracy to mask the original wound. The British built their settlement on land that once belonged to nobody in particular, then enforced borders with soldiers and the steady tick of bureaucratic pens. They imported bricks, soap, and etiquette, building a world that was British in everything but geography. The French followed, less rigid but equally insistent, layering their own customs and police over the existing chaos. Americans staked their ground with ambition and opportunism, always arriving a little late but making up for lost time. And through it all, The opium trade flourished, institutionalized now, protected by treaties and gunboats, hidden in plain sight on shipping manifests and in the ledgers of respectable firms. The British East India Company perfected the system. Poppies grown in India, processed and shipped in bulk, auctioned at Calcutta, and sold for profit in Shanghai's teeming markets. The Chinese government taxed the trade, even as it condemned it. Reformers protested, even as their words vanished beneath the weight of commerce. The real machinery of empire was invisible. Customs officials paid to look the other way, bankers who built their fortunes on the backs of broken families, missionaries who decried the drug from the pulpit but took donations from anyone whose money did not smell of smoke. The hypocrisy was not a secret. It was a feature, another layer of protection for those who believed themselves untouchable. Everywhere you look, you see evidence of this legacy. Mansions with gardens built on suffering, streets paved with the silver of vanished fortunes, police who serve only the highest bidder. Even the rituals of daily life are shaped by the logic of occupation, the endless calculation of how much risk you can afford. There is no part of the city untouched by this history. Every alley, every office, every opium den is haunted by the certainty that everything here was bought and paid for with someone else's ruin. You realize, walking through Shanghai, that the city itself is a living monument to the logic of empire, a structure built not for beauty or for justice, but for the relentless flow of goods and money. Treaties hang invisible in the air, shaping what is allowed, who is protected, and what stories are told. The wounds inflicted in the name of progress are too deep to heal, too profitable to close. And as another shipment is unloaded on the docks, as another contract is signed in a foreign tongue, you understand the most enduring truth. The city's suffering was never a byproduct. It was the plan. The British brought order and commerce, but they also brought a new kind of chaos, one that would last far longer than any single war, outlive every treaty, and keep the city locked in a cycle of dependence that no one, not even its victors, could ever fully control. The walls that shape Shanghai are seldom built of brick. They rise in the spaces between languages, in the moments of hesitation when a handshake lingers a fraction too long, in the quick, appraising glance that sizes you up and quietly sorts you into 1,000 silent categories. These are the boundaries no map records, yet you encounter them everywhere. Stepping from a British avenue into a Chinese alley, from a French cafe into a tea house where every conversation softens to a hush when you appear. To the British, you're never quite one of them. Your accent is wrong, your clothes a little out of place, your knowledge of the latest London scandal always a day too late. They welcome you with smiles that never reach their eyes, including you in social rituals that feel rehearsed and slightly brittle. Invitations to parties arrive, but somehow you're always on the edge of the room, clutching a drink that tastes foreign no matter how much gin you pour into it. Their world is defined by rules you only half understand, and when you slip, confusing the proper fork, mispronouncing a street name, you see the flicker of amusement, the gentle tightening of the circle that reminds you this is not and never will be your world. Across the city, the Chinese neighborhoods thrum with a different energy, both vibrant and wary. You admire the resourcefulness, the pulse of daily life that never seems to pause. But here, too, you are an outsider. Your attempts at Mandarin provoke polite nods, then laughter when you turn away. At the market, you pay more for everything, your presence marking you as an easy mark, or worse, as a potential threat. The children stare with open curiosity, then scatter if you try to speak. In the evenings, when families gather for supper behind paper screens, your shadow alone is enough to make conversations falter. You sense their skepticism, Another foreigner come to watch, to judge, to take without ever truly giving. Even in the supposed neutrality of the French concession, where foreigners of all stripes mingle in cafes and garden courtyards, the boundaries persist. Here, the walls are softer, but no less real, woven from shared gossip and subtle alliances. The French embrace you in conversation, their language flowing easily, but there's always a question in their eyes. What are you doing here, really? What do you want from Shanghai? The laughter is warmer, the wine flows freely, but by the end of the night, you're still walking home alone, the city's divisions pressing closer with every step. In truth, the only constant is your own sense of dislocation. You drift between enclaves, changing your gait, your tone, your vocabulary, hoping to fit, never quite succeeding. You become adept at camouflage, adopting the rigid posture of a British clerk, the world-weary humor of a French trader, the quick calculation of a Chinese shopkeeper. Yet every disguise is temporary, wearing thin at the edges where fatigue and loneliness seep in. You notice the spaces between people, the way groups cluster and then part as you approach, the way guards watch you, not as a threat, but as a variable, the way street vendors brighten when they see your coins, then turn away the moment the transaction ends. You are always tolerated, rarely embraced. Too foreign for one world, too different for the next. The walls shift and move with you, never quite letting you through. Sometimes, late at night, you wander the city's borders, a canal that marks the end of the international settlement, a lane where the street signs switch from English to Chinese, a garden wall draped with flowering vines that no one dares cross. You pause, listening to the hush that falls as you cross each invisible threshold. The silence is different here. You imagine the city as a body, each district a separate organ, connected but never truly blending. Blood flows, information travels, but the tissue that binds everything together is fragile and easily torn. You wonder if there is anyone here who truly belongs. You watch the British struggle to maintain their world of imported comforts, the Chinese adapting and resisting in equal measure, the French building their fleeting utopias, and the Americans plotting their next advance. Everyone seems to be playing a part, adjusting to new scripts as circumstances demand, clinging to whatever sense of identity survives the city's endless reinventions. And so you continue, always in motion, always searching for the space where you might finally become invisible, not as a stranger, but as someone who simply belongs. Yet the city never quite allows it. The walls, unseen but unyielding, close in around you, shaping your every choice. In Shanghai, you are both everywhere and nowhere, just another shadow moving through a city of shifting lines, hoping that, for a moment, you might find yourself on the inside, looking out. Curiosity is a gentle liar. It assures you that looking won't hurt, that you can step to the edge of anything and retreat whenever you wish. The first time you find yourself standing before the low door of an opium den, the sensation is almost trivial. A detour on the way home, a story to collect and tell later, a secret to file away with all the others the city whispers at night. The lantern above the entrance glows a dull, patient red, painting the damp stones beneath your feet in an unfamiliar shade. You linger, telling yourself you're here to observe, that your will is iron, your mind unclouded. Inside, the world changes immediately. The den is smaller than you expected, narrow and full of muted sounds, laughter softened by velvet curtains, coughs swallowed by heavy air. Shadows cling to the walls, and each movement is slow, deliberate, as if the people here have slipped free from time's usual grip. You step cautiously over a threshold sticky with spilled tea, aware of eyes that flicker up, then quickly look away. An attendant nods without speaking, guiding you to a spot against the wall where the light is weakest and the sounds are thickest.
You sit on a low couch that yields beneath your weight, its fabric warm from the last person who left, its pattern nearly erased by years of use. All around, men and women lounge in varying stages of surrender, their faces calm, their limbs heavy. There is nothing menacing here, just an endless hush, the feeling that you have entered a room where pain is forbidden and memory politely checked at the door. You breathe in, cautious at first, and the scent is unmistakable, sweet, musky, strangely gentle, as if the smoke itself is trying to comfort you. The pipe appears in your hand with no ceremony. You watch as the attendant prepares a dark, glistening pearl, rolling it between his fingers and toasting it gently over a small lamp. His hands are steady, his face unreadable. There is a kind of reverence to the motion, a ritual that seems both sacred and entirely mundane. You tell yourself again that this is only a taste, only once, only tonight. You let the lie settle in your mind as easily as the pipe settles between your lips. The first inhale surprises you. The smoke is thicker than you imagined, sliding down your throat with the weight of velvet and the heat of wine. It burns for a moment, then fades, replaced by a numb sweetness that spreads through your chest, your arms, the tips of your fingers. Your eyes water, your heartbeat flutters, and for a breathless instant you consider stopping. But the sensation is not pain, it is relief, swift, gentle, unearned. You try to catalog your thoughts, to hold on to the boundaries of yourself, but everything softens. The noise in your mind, the worries, the hunger, the constant calculation, fades as if washed away by a gentle tide. The aches in your body dissolve. The faces in the room blur, then settle into masks of serene exhaustion. You feel yourself sinking, but not falling. The room tilts gently like a ship easing into calm water. For the first time since your arrival in Shanghai, you are not alert. You are not bracing for insult or injury or loss. You are still. Somewhere nearby, someone laughs, a sound as light as dust. A cough lingers, then vanishes. You close your eyes and drift, neither awake nor truly asleep. You forget for a moment what you were seeking when you entered. You forget the day's humiliations, the weight of all the invisible walls. Here, nothing is required of you. Here, you are permitted to want nothing. When you finally stand, if it can be called standing, the world feels different. Your limbs are too light, your thoughts slow and strangely grateful. You step outside, squinting at the lamp-lit street, and the air tastes sharper than before. Every sound is louder. The shapes of people and carriages are too bright, too fast. You pause in the alley, pressing your hand to your chest, certain that this will be the end of your experiment.
But already, as you walk back to your narrow bed, the memory of that silence, that comfort, flickers in your mind. You tell yourself it was curiosity. You tell yourself it was nothing. Yet in the stillness of your room, long after the city's noise has faded, you realize that the boundary you thought was so firm has shifted beneath your feet. And as the first light of morning creeps through the cracked window pane, you know, with a clarity as gentle as the smoke itself, that you will return. Not because you want to, but because you can't imagine why you wouldn't. The moment the smoke coils in your lungs, the city vanishes. It is not the crude silence of emptiness, but something deeper, a hush that settles over every memory, every unfinished thought, every hunger you've carried since your arrival. The sounds of Shanghai, rickshaw wheels rattling over cobblestones, vendors bellowing their wares, the ever-present chorus of languages slip away as if someone has closed a door you never noticed before. For the first time, you do not strain to understand or to belong. There is only stillness. Your body feels foreign and perfectly yours at the same time,
Muscles unclench, fingers go slack, and the constant ache behind your eyes softens until it's almost gone. The pain you didn't know you carried dissolves without fanfare. You watch yourself relax as if from a distance, marveling at the simple weight of your own limbs. The feverish rush of survival is gone, replaced by the gentle insistence that you are here, that you can rest, that nothing is required of you except to breathe in and let go. The den fades to gold and shadow, the lantern light blurred by half-closed eyes. Your mind begins to drift, each thought smoothing into the next, impossible to separate. Questions that haunted you, the ones about home, about failure, about what tomorrow will demand, recede like the tide. Even your name loses its sharpness. You could be anyone or no one, and the relief of that realization makes you almost smile. A laugh, soft and private, slips past your lips and disappears into the hush. Around you, others float in the same current. No one speaks. A man's breath hitches, then falls into the rhythm of the room, a slow inhale, a slower exhale, the subtle chorus of bodies learning to need less. Someone coughs, but the sound is muffled, a small disturbance quickly swallowed by the warmth of the air. There is comfort in this shared withdrawal from the world. It is as if the room itself is holding you, not as a guest or an intruder, but as part of its secret purpose.
Time loses its shape. Minutes stretch and twist, folding into one another until you are no longer certain whether you have been here for an hour or a day. The outside world might as well be a dream, another life lived by someone who never discovered this peculiar peace. Hunger fades, thirst is forgotten. Even regret becomes thin, barely worth remembering. At some point, you try to stand. The effort is monumental and strangely amusing. Your body protests, then relents, allowing you to lean against the wall as the room slowly tilts back into place. The ache returns, faint but insistent, and with it a taste of bitterness on your tongue. Your vision flickers once, twice, before you steady yourself. The first step is cautious, almost apologetic, but the floor holds. You find your way to the door, and the city re-enters you all at once. The brightness too sharp, the street sounds too wild, the air too cold against your skin. You tell yourself it was only curiosity, a detour taken for the sake of experience. Yet, as you walk back through Shanghai's restless streets, you find yourself longing for that hush, that erasure. The city feels heavier now, its noise insistent, its colors garish. Every detail is magnified, every edge too pronounced. It is as if you have lost your armor, and everything ordinary now stings. You touch your fingers to your lips, half expecting the sweetness to linger, but all that remains is a memory, already fading, but impossible to forget. Later, as you lie awake in your narrow bed, the silence you found in the den echoes within you, distant but beckoning. You turn it over in your mind, searching for its source, trying to convince yourself that the calm was a trick, a fleeting illusion, nothing more. Still, you wonder how long the quiet will last, and how soon you will need to seek it out again. The first taste was nothing, you promise yourself, a single breath surrendered to the city's oldest invitation. But already, deep down, you know better. The peace you found was real, and that, more than anything, is what frightens you. The haze begins to lift, and with it comes the slow unraveling of that fragile peace. At first, it's just a faint discomfort, a gentle tug at the edge of your awareness. Your limbs feel heavy, your mouth dry, your heartbeat echoing hollowly in your chest. The room you woke in, narrow, unfamiliar, somehow colder than before, seems to tilt with each breath. You blink, expecting the calm to linger, but all that's left is an ache that settles somewhere deep, impossible to shake. The world rushes back in uneven waves. The lantern light now hurts your eyes. Every sound feels too sharp, and the warmth that once cradled you is replaced by a chill that sinks beneath your skin. Your thoughts, once softened and slow, now scrape against each other, restless and insistent. Regret curls in your stomach, a dull weight made heavier by the memory of how effortless everything felt an hour ago. That fleeting escape, so complete, so easy, now seems impossibly distant. You try to reassemble yourself, to push away the fog and stand. The simple acts, putting on your shoes, washing your face, straightening your jacket, require a focus you no longer possess. It is as if you are moving through water, the air thick with things unsaid. The faces you pass on your way out do not meet your gaze. Some are already lost to the next round of smoke. Others watch you with a wariness that stings. Outside, the city is unwelcoming, its noises once again a barrage, its smells too vivid. The traffic of life moves on, indifferent to your discomfort. There is a hunger now, subtle but persistent, a longing not for food or warmth, but for a return to that silence, that moment when the city and all its demands faded into background noise. You retrace your steps, hoping to shake off the emptiness, but it clings to you with every stride. The market's clamor rings hollow, the colors seem less vibrant, even the river breeze feels indifferent. You see the city more clearly, but with that clarity comes a sense of separation. The invisible walls you sensed before have thickened. You are both more present and less involved than ever. You promise yourself it was only an experiment, a single indulgence, a curiosity satisfied. But the ache is more than physical. It is a vacuum, a blank space in your chest that grows with each passing hour. Everything familiar is edged with irritation. The rhythm of the city that once seemed full of opportunity now feels relentless, uncaring. Every smile from a stranger is too bright, every word from a friend too loud. You are present, but only halfway. At night, sleep refuses to come. Your body aches for something it cannot name. Your mind loops endlessly through fragments of the den. Shadows moving against red velvet, the smell of smoke, the weightless hush that seemed to promise relief from every pain. You remember how easily you drifted, how natural it felt to let go. The craving builds quietly, hidden beneath layers of denial and stubbornness. You remind yourself you are strong, different, not one of those who lose themselves completely. But as dawn creeps across your window, painting the city in pale gray, you find yourself counting the hours since you left that quiet room. You remember how quickly the pain faded, how complete the comfort was, how brief and absolute the forgetting. The emptiness inside you thrums, and you begin to wonder how long you can resist the call to return. The promise you made to try it only once crumbles in the face of the city's relentless noise, and you realize, with a twinge of shame, that curiosity was never the only reason. You are chasing something now, something you can barely admit to yourself, the hope that, in the depths of the next haze, you might find that perfect silence again. It doesn't happen with a single decision. No line is crossed in a flash of drama, no vow is broken, no promise shouted into the dark. Instead, habit weaves itself quietly around your days, a pattern so subtle you barely notice it forming. The first return to the den feels justified. The noise outside is too much, the ache in your chest too sharp, and you remember how easily the city faded when you let the smoke in. You tell yourself it's just for tonight, a shield against the fatigue that never quite lifts. But soon, the excuses multiply. Shanghai gives you plenty. A bad day, a lost job, a friend's betrayal, the endless grinding indifference of a city that asks everything and returns nothing. The den becomes an answer to problems too complex to solve, a release from worries too persistent to outthink. The visits are spaced days apart, then hours. Each time, you're certain you'll stop before it's too late, but the space between before and after collapses into a blur of drifting afternoons and slow, endless nights. The world outside begins to recede, like a shoreline you once knew, but now only glimpse between long stretches at sea. Days blend into one another. The city's colors dull, its promises ring hollow. Friends you once met for tea drift away, unable to reach you through the haze that settled between you and everything that used to matter. Conversations become chores. Obligations are missed and then forgotten, replaced by the ritual of preparing for the next escape. The routine grows familiar, almost comforting. The den greets you with the same dim light, the same mix of faces, some strangers, some growing as familiar as old furniture. There is a camaraderie in shared silence, an unspoken agreement that the world beyond the velvet curtains can wait. You notice the details, the texture of the couch, the patterns in the faded wallpaper, the soft rustle of slippers as the attendant moves from pipe to pipe. The passage of time feels irrelevant, measured only by the slow cycle of anticipation, relief, and longing. Outside, your habits begin to show. Your step is less steady, your attention drifts at odd moments. The shopkeepers eye you warily, weighing your worth in the currency of reliability. Sometimes you catch your own reflection in a rain-spattered window and barely recognize the hollowed cheeks, the restless eyes. But these glimpses of self-awareness fade quickly, swept aside by the hunger for the next haze. Ambition, once sharp and urgent, grows distant and pale. The plans you made, jobs to pursue, friendships to rekindle, dreams to chase, slip out of reach, abandoned in favor of the only certainty you have left. The den is always there, waiting, patient as the tide. Whatever regrets you carry, the smoke will soften them. Whatever wounds you suffer, the hush will ease them for a while. You begin to measure your life in intervals between visits. A day becomes something to endure until you can surrender again. Meals are skipped, letters go unanswered, appointments are missed without apology. You keep secrets from yourself, inventing reasons to return to the den even when none are needed. The city grows small, its boundaries shrinking to the space between your narrow bed and the dimly lit room where you vanish. The outside world continues, relentless and indifferent. News drifts in, another war, another celebration, another neighbor who's disappeared from the street. None of it seems real, or at least none of it seems urgent. Your world has narrowed to a single, unbreakable loop: craving, surrender, and the brief, golden hush that promises everything and delivers only a little more emptiness each time. By the time you notice what has changed, the damage is already done. You are woven into the pattern of the city now, a thread lost among thousands, your desires replaced by a single, silent need. There is no turning back. The routine you thought was harmless has become your only constant, a web so fine and tight that you can't remember when you stopped struggling, or if you ever really wanted to escape.
Inside the opium den, the world operates by a different code, one both simpler and far more mysterious than anything outside its walls. The usual distinctions of rank and fortune fade beneath the haze, replaced by a subtler calculus. Who is new and who is old? Who can still pay and who now relies on mercy? Who can hold their smoke and who surrenders too quickly to its embrace? You become a part of this society by degrees, drawn in as your visits blur into routine and your face grows familiar among the regulars. At first you are merely a guest, watched with mild curiosity, tolerated for the coins you offer, your inexperience marked by awkward gestures and an uncertainty you try to mask. The den's veterans eye you with a blend of amusement and weary indifference. They have seen dozens like you, the hopeful, the curious, the broken, all filtering through, some never leaving. Their own places are marked by habit, the favored couch in the darkest corner, the blanket reserved from long acquaintance, the subtle nod exchanged with the attendant who knows precisely when to refill a pipe and when to leave a customer in silence. Soon you learn the rhythms that guide this hidden community. Conversation is rare, usually whispered or muttered, never lasting long. Respect is measured not in titles or wealth, but in how you carry yourself through the rituals of surrender. Those who cling to their old identities, who still boast of their jobs, their origins, their cleverness, are gently ignored or quietly mocked. Here, the only stories that matter are the ones that float through the haze. Fragments of loss and longing, hints of better days. Sometimes confessions so raw that they are immediately forgotten as soon as they're spoken. You notice the quiet hierarchies at play. The regulars hold a certain sway, not by force, but by a kind of sad seniority. The attendant serves them first, gives them the best spots, sometimes offers a bit of food or a moment's extra care. Those who have fallen too far, whose debts now outweigh their value, are relegated to the coldest corners. Their presence a reminder to everyone of how thin the line is between comfort and abandonment. In this place, generosity is rare and short-lived. Mercy reserved for those with a little hope left to lose.
There are unwritten rules. Never demand more than your share. Never interrupt someone's silence. Never comment on another's suffering. There is a strange intimacy in the way people ignore each other's pain, a mutual agreement to let every person retreat as far as they wish into their own oblivion. Disputes are rare, but when they arise, are settled quickly and quietly. A word from the attendant, a soft warning, sometimes a gentle hand guiding someone out the door and back to the street. Within these walls, the outside world shrinks to irrelevance. News of revolutions, marriages, deaths, none of it penetrates the fog for long. The den is a sanctuary, but also a trap, a place where time softens and the past loses its edge. Faces age in reverse here, first shedding the tension of daily survival, then slowly fading into the blankness of those who have nothing left to prove. Sometimes you catch yourself wondering who these people once were, what dreams they carried before habit replaced hope. The truth is never spoken aloud. And as you find your place in this peculiar order, you realize that respect is earned not by triumph, but by how gracefully one accepts defeat. The most admired are those who ask for nothing, who dissolve into the background with a kind of dignity born of surrender. They have nothing left to lose, and so they become almost invisible, their presence felt only in the silence they leave behind. You become part of the den's furniture, a fixture to be navigated around, a quiet presence in the tapestry of routine. You know the secret signals, the language of glances and gestures, the tiny rituals that make you belong. Yet even as you settle into this new community, you sense the cost. Every act of acceptance, every nod of recognition, draws you further from the world outside and deeper into the unspoken logic that governs life within these walls. Here, everyone's story is different, but the ending is always the same: a slow fading, a gentle erasure, measured not in victories, but in how completely you've let yourself be carried away. The process is gradual, so subtle that you barely notice it until it is nearly complete. At first, you tell yourself you are still the person you were when you arrived, a traveler with a plan, someone moving through the city on the way to something better. But with each day, each return to the den, pieces of yourself begin to flake away. Memory becomes unreliable, breaking into fragments that slip through your grasp like water through trembling fingers. Names, faces, promises made only yesterday dissolve in the haze, leaving behind only a faint sense of loss. The rituals that once shaped your mornings fade into irrelevance. There is no reason to wake at a certain hour, no need to wash or dress for anyone's approval. The city's rhythms pass you by. Markets open and close, festivals come and go, but you watch them as if through frosted glass, disconnected from meaning or purpose. What once brought you comfort, a favorite meal, a long walk along the river, the letters from home, now seems impossibly distant, echoes from a life lived by someone else. You notice yourself shrinking from the world. Conversations dwindle to a few mumbled words, your voice hoarse from disuse. You avoid the mirrors in your rented room, but sometimes, when you cannot help it, you catch a glimpse of your own reflection and recoil. The eyes staring back are hollow and unfamiliar, marked by shadows and the faint tremor of someone who has wandered too far. You look for the spark of defiance you once carried, but it has been extinguished, replaced by a dull resignation that settles deep beneath your skin. The den hastens this erasure, gently and relentlessly. The silence within its walls is seductive, promising a kind of safety that the world outside cannot offer. With every pipe, the details of your life become less urgent. The past, the future, even the present grow indistinct, blurred together in the endless dusk of forgetting. You stop marking the days. Time is measured only by the slow procession of shadows across the floor. The city's noises become distant. Carriages rolling over stone, the call of vendors, the shouts of children, all muffled by the thickness of your isolation. Other people's stories fade too. The friends you made upon arrival are gone, their faces replaced by the anonymous drift of those who now share your exile. Even their names lose meaning. When you do speak, the words feel foreign, as if borrowed from someone else's tongue. Laughter is rare, and when it comes, it sounds forced, echoing uncomfortably in the silence that follows. What remains is not truly loneliness, but a kind of emptiness that crowds out everything else. You move through the city unnoticed, a shadow among thousands, no longer certain where you end and the city begins. Shanghai, in its way, has claimed you, not with force, but by offering you a place to disappear. In the den, you are just another figure reclining in the half-light, indistinguishable from all the others whose stories have been washed away by smoke and silence.
At last, you realize that the greatest danger was never in the opium itself, but in the slow dissolution of the self that once seemed unbreakable. Every memory surrendered, every habit discarded, every moment left unmarked brings you closer to the threshold where you are no longer anyone at all. The city does not mourn these losses. It absorbs them without notice, another secret folded into its endless shifting maze. In the rare moments of clarity, when the smoke thins and the world sharpens for an instant, you are struck by the strangeness of your own reflection. How someone who came in search of a new life became so thoroughly erased. You reach for a sense of self, for the old habits, the old hopes, but they slip away, lost somewhere between the city's shadows and the slow, persistent tide of forgetting. And so you drift, a stranger to yourself, vanished long before anyone thought to search for you. What begins as a private struggle is, in truth, part of a machine far larger and colder than any individual story. The empire that runs through Shanghai is not built on stone and ceremony alone.
It is powered by the careful, deliberate conversion of pain into profit. Your suffering, and the suffering of those beside you in the den, is not a secret. It is counted, tracked, and woven into the city's economy as surely as any bar of silver or bale of silk. The more you fade, the more the system thrives. The evidence is everywhere, hidden in plain sight. Merchants tally their accounts not just in goods traded, but in pipes sold, in debts quietly called in the steady stream of silver flowing from desperate hands. Behind the polished counters of respectable shops, ledgers are filled with transactions that have nothing to do with tea or spices. The bankers in their foreign offices know exactly where the real wealth lies, watching the cycle of import and addiction with an indifferent precision that never acknowledges the cost. Every shipment is part of a chain, poppies cultivated far away, harvested by hands you'll never see, processed and pressed and packed by workers whose fates are as remote as your own is forgotten. The crates arrive by steamship and riverboat, passed through customs by officials who know better than to look too closely, then handed down to street-level brokers whose fortunes are built on the hopes and failures of strangers. Policemen, some honest and many not, patrol the streets in careful patterns, making sure that the trade continues smoothly, that order is maintained, that the right palms are greased. The den itself operates like a small cog in a vast engine. The attendants who light the pipes and collect the coins are not villains. They are caught in the same web, their lives reduced to survival by the very system that exploits your weakness. They see hundreds like you, some who stagger in with their last coin, others who barter what little they have left for another taste of oblivion. The den's owner, often a shadowy figure whose name is rarely spoken aloud, pays tribute to those above him, ensuring the business can continue undisturbed. In the end, everyone is both victim and participant, upholding a cycle that cannot be broken by any single act of refusal. Above all of this hovers the foreign powers whose authority made it all possible. The treaties that forced open the city's gates did not just permit the trade, they institutionalized it, transforming personal ruin into reliable income. British and French and American investors, safe behind thick walls and guarded compounds, read reports of opium sales with the same dispassion as they study stocks and bonds. When they meet to toast another profitable quarter, it is not the faces in the den they see, but only numbers, only ledgers balanced by someone else's loss. You realize with growing clarity that your own decline is a line item in someone else's business plan. The pain you once believed was unique, your failures, your loneliness, your longing for escape, has been anticipated, measured, and priced. Every night spent in the den feeds a network of interests so deeply entrenched that they have become invisible, their violence hidden by the routines of commerce and the polite fiction of legality. There is no conspiracy, no villain in a dark room plotting your ruin. Instead, there is only the relentless, indifferent efficiency of a market that rewards despair and multiplies suffering by the simple math of supply and demand. The city's splendor, its grand hotels and glittering ballrooms, are built upon the backs of the vanished, the erased, the forgotten. The system does not care if you wake or vanish. It cares only that the numbers add up, that the shipments arrive on time, that the smoke never stops rising from the dens. And so you see, finally, that this is not your tragedy alone. It is a design, one that dwarfs every hope and intention you ever carried with you to Shanghai. Your struggle, your slow dissolution, is not an accident. It is a function. The pain, multiplied 1,000-fold, keeps the gears turning, the money flowing, the city alive. And as you stare out across the river, watching another ship arrive, you understand that escape is not just a matter of will. It would mean turning against the gravity of an entire empire, one built to ensure that for as long as there is hope to be crushed, the machine will never stop. When the last coins slip through your fingers, the city's mask falls away. The Shanghai you glimpsed through bright shop windows and bustling markets reveals a different face, a world built not on opportunity, but on survival and silent desperation. Each step into the open air is heavier now. No more safe retreats to velvet-curtained dens, no more hush of smoke to mute the city's relentless noise. You are exposed, stripped of all but the raw need that drives you from alley to alley in search of anything to dull the hunger twisting in your gut. Poverty is everywhere, yet invisible to those who can afford to look away. The proud facades of the foreign settlements cast deep shadows, and in those shadows gather the cities forgotten. Men sleep in doorways covered in old newspapers or nothing at all, their feet curled to their chests as if to keep what little warmth is left. Women linger at corners with hollow eyes, watching each passerby with hope that flickers and dies with every averted gaze. Children weave between carriages and handcarts, their voices thin from hunger, their laughter brittle as cracked porcelain. You learn new rules. Charity is rare and rarely free. The shopkeepers who once greeted you with cautious smiles now harden their faces, counting change twice, their eyes following your hands. Every transaction is tinged with suspicion. The den, once a haven, becomes a memory behind a locked door. Even there, you are no longer welcome, unless you can pay in silver or favors, and you have nothing left to offer. Doors close, voices lower, and you understand that your presence is a warning, a glimpse of how quickly fortunes can unravel. Hunger stalks you. It sharpens every sense, makes you desperate in ways you never imagined. You search for scraps in the market, watching as others pick through bruised fruit and wilted greens before you arrive. The taste of shame is as real as the ache in your stomach. Each refusal from a shopkeeper, each glance from a passerby, cuts deeper than hunger itself. You grow thin, your clothes hanging loose, your face harder in the mirror you avoid.
Fear is your constant companion. Not just fear of violence or the law, though both are real and close, but a quieter, more gnawing dread. The fear of being invisible, of being left behind. You drift along the city's edge, avoiding the patrols who might sweep you away for loitering, dodging the gangs who prey on those who have nothing left. The world that once seemed wide with possibility has narrowed to a few unsafe blocks, a handful of alleys where you can sleep without being chased off before dawn. You witness the brutality that festers when hope is gone. Fights break out over crumbs, over dry places to rest, over rumors of work that rarely materializes. Police move through the streets with indifference, sometimes extracting bribes, sometimes turning their backs on suffering. In these moments, the city is revealed not as a collection of grand ambitions, but as a machine designed to consume those who cannot keep pace. There is no safety net, only the cold calculation of survival. And yet, amid the wreckage, you notice others like you, faces marked by the same thin hunger, the same exhaustion. You are no longer invisible to them. There is a recognition, a silent understanding exchanged in glances and the brief comfort of shared misfortune. Sometimes a crust of bread is split without a word, or a warm spot by a stove is shared for a few hours. These small mercies stand out in stark relief against the city's harshness, proof that even when all else is lost, a trace of kindness survives. But the world has changed, and so have you. The dreams that carried you to Shanghai are gone, replaced by the daily challenge of getting through to the next sunrise. The city, for all its splendor, reveals itself as a place without pity, a place that strips away illusions as thoroughly as it strips away wealth. You move through its streets as both a warning and a lesson, evidence of how quickly everything can be taken, and how few are willing to see what remains. The empire thrives, the rich grow richer, and all the while, at the city's broken heart, you and those like you endure, bound together by hunger, shame, and the faint, stubborn hope that something, someday, might change. You slip quietly through the cracks until you're little more than a shadow among thousands. There comes a point when even those who once shared your hunger avert their eyes as you pass, afraid to see their own future reflected back at them. The world which once buzzed with opportunity and threat now barely registers your presence. Shopkeepers look through you, not bothering to shoo you away because they know you can't buy. The market's rhythm moves on without you, and the city's noise becomes a dull, constant hum, its patterns now unreachable and strange. Even among the broken and desperate, you are set apart, not through malice, but by a kind of silent instinct. You have nothing left to offer, nothing left to trade. The camaraderie you once found on the city's edge has faded. Where there used to be nods of recognition or scraps of comfort shared, there is now only indifference. The thin thread of humanity that connects the forsaken begins to fray, and the kindness that survives in rare moments is reserved for those who still look as if they might climb out. You have crossed some invisible boundary. You are no longer seen as someone passing through hardship, but as someone the world has already passed by. Days and nights blend seamlessly. Time loses meaning, except for the slow tick of hunger and the need for shelter from rain or cold. You find yourself searching for corners unclaimed, for space not already occupied by other souls resigned to the same vanishing. Sometimes you try to speak, to call back someone who once shared a blanket or a crust of bread, but the words die on your tongue, lost to the wind and the city's roar. Your voice is unfamiliar, as if it belongs to someone else. You become adept at invisibility, learning the art of moving without being noticed, of waiting out the hours in places where the world flows around you like a river splitting around a stone. Each morning is a negotiation: how to find food, where to rest, how to remain unseen by those who would chase you away, and how to avoid the gaze of those who would take advantage of your weakness. There are no more plans, no more wishes. Existence narrows to the next breath, the next scrap, the next patch of warmth. The loneliness is absolute. In the early days, the ache of isolation was sharp and urgent. Now it is simply part of you, as natural as the hunger in your belly. You watch people move in groups, speaking in voices too distant to understand, their laughter cutting across the city's gloom like a reminder of another world you cannot re-enter. Sometimes you dream of someone calling your name, a voice from a life that feels impossibly far away, but you wake to silence and the cold reality of being utterly alone. The city, indifferent and vast, absorbs you, as it has absorbed so many before. The stories you once carried, hopes, regrets, plans, fade to nothing, replaced by a simple, stubborn instinct to endure. You are not mourned, not even noticed. You walk the streets unseen, a phantom drifting through a city that no longer cares if you vanish.
And slowly, you do. Not with drama or noise, but in the gradual erasure of being, a steady disappearance into the space between all the other lives hurrying past. You try to stand, to move, but your legs will not cooperate. The effort leaves you gasping, your heart racing with the exertion of simply being alive. Sometimes, passers-by glance in your direction, and in their eyes you see pity, disgust, or, most often, nothing at all. They step around you, careful not to come too close, as if your condition might be contagious. The loneliness, already vast, expands until it is the only thing left that feels certain. Sometimes, passers-by glance in your direction, and in their eyes you see pity, disgust, or, most often, nothing at all. They step around you, careful not to come too close, as if your condition might be contagious. The loneliness, already vast, expands until it is the only thing left that feels certain. In the rare moments when the pain ebbs, you are left hollowed out, weak in a way that goes beyond exhaustion. The cravings return, sharp as ever, tempting you with the promise of relief, if only you could find a way. You tell yourself you are strong, that you can endure a little longer, but your resolve crumbles with each new wave of agony. The haze has become the axis around which your existence turns, and without it, you are lost. There is no dignity in this suffering, no lesson to be drawn. Your body betrays you, your mind conspires against you, and all that remains is a relentless longing for an end to the pain. You wait, powerless, for something to change, for the world to shift just enough to let you breathe again. Until then, you exist in the liminal space between agony and oblivion, hoping each hour that the worst is behind you, even as you fear it has only just begun. Trying to break free begins as an act of raw desperation. After the worst of the physical torment ebbs, after the fevers and the cramps, the restless nights curled on hard floors, the pounding ache behind your eyes, what remains is even harder to endure. You emerge battered but determined, telling yourself that if you can survive the pain, you can survive the want. For a moment, the promise of a life reclaimed, however humble, shimmers in the distance. You cling to it, stubborn as ever, determined to believe that this time you will not return. But the struggle is not over. In the absence of the haze, the city is mercilessly clear. Every wall you once hid behind has vanished. The old ache is replaced by a new kind of emptiness, a space so vast and echoing that it feels like standing alone at the center of a ruined world. You notice everything you tried to forget, the faces you disappointed, the dreams you abandoned, the friendships that withered without explanation. Guilt returns with a vengeance, sharper than any withdrawal. You remember every lie told for the sake of another coin, every kindness refused, every promise broken. The den's hush once protected you from these memories, but now they press in, relentless and accusing. There is a strange freedom in this final invisibility. No one asks anything of you. No one expects, demands, or remembers. The world takes what little you have left, and in return grants you the quiet anonymity of the truly forgotten. You exist now as a whisper, a faint presence, felt only in the cold draft of an alley or the emptiness of a midnight street. The city moves on, and you are left behind, not as a warning or a lesson, but simply as another story the city chose not to tell. There comes a time when the struggle is no longer only in your mind. It roots itself in your bones, turns your body into a battleground. The absence of the haze becomes an agony, more real than any hunger you've ever known. Sleep refuses to visit. Every joint aches as if wrenched from within, and waves of nausea rise and fall until you are left curled in some forgotten corner, shivering with a cold that has nothing to do with the weather. The world closes in, sharp and unyielding. Every sound an irritation, every breath an effort. Your muscles twitch uncontrollably. A fever settles behind your eyes, blurring the outlines of the city into a smeared, hostile palette. You sweat and freeze in the same hour, trapped in a body that no longer obeys even your smallest wishes. Your hands tremble so badly you can barely lift a scrap of food to your mouth. Hunger gnaws at your stomach, but nothing stays down for long. You are reduced to a cluster of raw nerves, every sensation sharpened until even the gentlest touch becomes unbearable. Memories crowd in, merciless and bright, taunting you with visions of everything lost. You recall the den's hush, the velvet silence that promised relief, and feel a deeper ache. The knowledge that comfort is just out of reach, that it would take only a few coins, a few words, to make the pain stop. You bargain with yourself, make promises in the dark, whisper oaths to no one. Each hour without the haze feels like an eternity, your thoughts turning in desperate circles, seeking any escape. The city pays no attention. Life continues beyond your suffering. Carriages rattle past, vendors hawk their wares, rain taps against the rooftops. The world shrinks to the radius of your pain, and time loses all meaning. Days and nights blur, and in the moments when you drift toward sleep, nightmares fill the space left by the smoke. Your dreams are vivid, cruel, scenes of warmth that vanish the moment you reach for them, faces from another life dissolving into the gloom. The silence is almost unbearable. What once felt like peace now feels like punishment. Without the familiar routine of the den, the exchange of glances, the quiet rituals, the relief of letting yourself disappear, you are exposed, stripped of even the comfort of numbness. The city's noise becomes a chorus of things you are no longer part of, voices that pass you by, laughter that rings hollow and distant. At night, sleep eludes you, not because of pain, but because your mind won't stop replaying all that's been lost. You wander, restless, from one lonely place to another, searching for something to fill the void left behind. Worst of all is the loneliness. Even in a crowd, you are isolated, set apart by memories no one wants to share. The people you once knew have moved on. They avert their eyes or cross the street. No one knows what to say to someone who has fallen so far. The rare acts of pity are transactional and short-lived, a piece of bread, a cup of broth, offered with a quick glance away. No one invites you back. No one expects you to return to the world you left behind. Every day, you wake resolved to endure another sunrise, to hold out a little longer. But the emptiness gnaws at you, and with it grows the quiet, persistent pull of memory, the promise of relief, the hush that made everything bearable. The craving never really leaves. It waits, patient and cunning, for a moment of weakness. It reminds you how easy it was to vanish, how simple to let the world slide away for an hour or a day. You count your victories in hours, in minutes, but each one feels smaller than the last. You begin to understand that the struggle is not only with your body, but with the silence, the guilt, the aching need for something, anything to drown out the truth. Each attempt at escape brings you back to this same crossroads: endure the emptiness or surrender to the haze. Sometimes you resist, clinging to the ragged hope of a different life. Sometimes you slip, and the cycle begins anew, as inevitable as the tides. In the end, you realize that the hardest part of breaking free is not the pain, but the knowledge that when the smoke clears, all that's left is you, alone, exposed, and still longing for the quiet that once made the world seem distant and kind. And so you stagger forward, caught between memory and oblivion, knowing that true escape is measured not in days or months, but in the silent, ceaseless struggle to face yourself without running away. There is a corner in every den where the light never quite reaches, where the hush is deeper and the air heavier, and where hope has long since faded into resignation. It is not marked or reserved, yet everyone learns soon enough to avoid it, or to drift toward it, when all other options are exhausted. Here gather those who have outlasted every chance, whose debts are too great, whose bodies too frail, whose spirits have been worn down to a quiet, persistent acceptance that nothing will change. You come to know this place not by choice, but by a slow process of elimination, each step backward pushing you closer to the farthest edge of comfort and attention. At first, you catch glimpses from across the room, figures half hidden by the folds of old blankets, faces lost in shadow, the steady, mechanical movements of hands preparing pipes out of habit, not desire. These are not the desperate or the newly broken. They do not bargain or beg, nor do they reach for conversation or comfort. They have become part of the furniture, their presence acknowledged only by the quiet deference with which others step around them, careful not to intrude on their silence. Even the attendants speak to them rarely, dropping a bowl of thin soup or a stale crust within reach, then slipping away without waiting for thanks. You notice, over time, how the den's community organizes itself around this space. Newcomers avoid it instinctively, sensing that here lies the end point of every hope the smoke once promised. Those with some energy left stay at the periphery, clinging to routines, to gossip, to the faint hope of something changing. But for those in the last corner, even dreams have grown too heavy to carry. Their eyes do not follow the comings and goings of others. Their faces, lined and hollow, betray no anger or fear, only the calm of those who have made their peace with the inevitable. The rules are different here. No one asks favors. No one expects repayment. Time stretches and contracts without pattern or purpose. The rituals that bind the rest of the den together, the passing of pipes, the trading of stories, the brief alliances forged and forgotten, mean little. There is no pretense left, no need to prove or explain. The only currency is time, measured in slow breaths, and the steady rhythm of waiting. Conversation is a rarity, and when it does occur, it is brief, almost ritualistic. A nod, a whispered greeting, a memory shared without sentiment.
Occasionally, you find yourself wandering near this border, drawn by curiosity or a sense of foreboding. You meet the eyes of someone who has settled here, and see not despair, but a kind of clarity, a recognition that the world beyond these walls has no more demands to make. There is a strange dignity in their presence, a sense that, freed from the struggle to improve or escape, they have entered a space where the city's noise and ambition can no longer touch them. Yet there is also a finality, an awareness that the only thing left is the slow unwinding of days, each one a little quieter than the last. For those in the last corner, the outside world has shrunk to a memory. Their stories are finished, their regrets have lost their sting. The den, which once offered a sanctuary from the city's cruelties, has become their whole universe, a small, dim space where nothing is asked and nothing expected, and where the only certainty is that everything will end in silence. You understand, watching them, that this is where the journey concludes, not with spectacle or outrage, but with a gentle slipping away, unnoticed by the world that once seemed so vast and full of promise.
Here, at the very edge, time ceases to matter. What remains is neither hope nor fear, but a final, unspoken truce. To wait for the end in the company of others who have also stopped waiting for miracles. And in that hush, deeper than any found in the smoke or the streets outside, you realize that the last corner is not a punishment, but the quiet destination of a journey that began long before you ever stepped into the den. Day merges with day, the passage of time marked only by the faint shift of light along the cracked plaster and the steady decline of the body you once inhabited without thought. There is no drama to this final stage, no sudden moment of revelation or change. Instead, your world contracts to a handful of sensations: the ache in your joints, the rattle in your chest, the dull throb behind your eyes. Each morning arrives without promise. The routine is simple, stripped of ambition or hope. Wake, cough, drift, wait for night, then begin again. The den itself seems to close around you, walls drawing nearer, air growing heavier, as if the building itself recognizes your fading presence and prepares to absorb what little is left. You no longer move far from your chosen spot. Even crossing the room costs too much strength. The attendants know you now by your silence, by the shape of your blanket, and the way you cradle your thin hands against your chest. Their visits are brief, their words few, but you sense a muted kindness, a bowl of water left at arm's reach, a scrap of bread delivered without comment. Sometimes a gentle touch on your shoulder reminds you that you are not entirely invisible. Not yet.
Hunger becomes a memory, replaced by a steady, gnawing fatigue that no food or rest can ease. The body's demands shrink to the simplest functions: breathing, swallowing, enduring. Each cough sends a ripple of pain through your ribs. Sometimes blood tinges your lips, and you turn away, unwilling to meet the worried glance of the attendant who witnessed it. There is no talk of illness, no desperate search for cures, just a quiet understanding that some battles are lost long before the final symptoms appear. Sleep comes in fragments, interrupted by fevered dreams that leave you shivering or gasping for air. The dreams are always the same: scenes from another life, sunlit streets and friendly voices, meals shared and laughter echoing against stone. Waking is both relief and disappointment, the den's shadows swallowing the remnants of comfort before you can grasp them. You watch the days drift past, the faces around you changing, some vanishing quietly, replaced by others who will follow the same slow decline. Your world narrows until it is measured by what you can see from your mat: the worn pattern of the floor, the flicker of lamplight on chipped bowls, the shifting silhouette of the window as dusk settles over the city. These are your anchors, the final constants in a life reduced to waiting. Occasionally, a familiar face will pause nearby, perhaps to exchange a word or simply to rest in your company. The conversations are brief, unburdened by hope or fear. What is there to say when the end has become so certain and so close? Yet there is a strange tranquility in these final days, a quiet that is different from the numbness of the smoke. You feel the city's demands fade to nothing. No more hunger for approval, no more anxiety over lost chances or forgotten ambitions. The struggle is finished. What remains is the slow, gentle erosion of self, a kind of surrender to forces you can neither fight nor flee. You become, finally, a part of the den itself, another fixture, another story absorbed into its walls. No one remarks on your decline. There are no farewells, no final reckoning. The world you knew recedes, leaving you with the hush of the room, the steady passage of hours, and the comfort of knowing that, at last, nothing more is expected of you.
Each breath is a small act of endurance, a quiet defiance against the inevitable, until, by degrees, even that becomes too much to ask. In the end, there is no drama, no bright flash or sudden release, only the gentle dimming of the world, the gradual surrender of the body to what it can no longer resist. You disappear by inches, absorbed into the silence, until you are nothing more than a memory, a faint impression left on a blanket, a story that will soon be replaced by another and another in a city that never pauses long enough to remember any of them.
When the end finally comes, it is quiet. So quiet, in fact, that even those closest to you may not realize it has happened until much later. There is no moment of drama, no gasp for attention, no one gathered at your side to mark your passing. Instead, you slip away as gently as smoke dissipating in the morning air, the last traces of your presence vanishing without ceremony. No tears are shed, no rituals performed. The other occupants of the den continue their routines, half aware that a silence has deepened in one corner, a shape gone still beneath a worn blanket. The attendants, practiced in this sad transition, do not hurry. They pause by your side, checking for breath, for movement, for any sign that a return to life might yet be possible. When none comes, they nod to each other in silent understanding and move quietly to the next task. There is a kind of reverence in their efficiency, a muted respect that comes not from affection, but from long familiarity with such endings. Your possessions, few as they are gathered and set aside, sometimes for the authorities, sometimes simply discarded. The space you occupied, the only home left to you, is stripped and tidied. A new mat is laid out, a fresh blanket spread, ready for whoever will arrive next. There is no announcement, no time taken for remembrance. The den, like the city itself, wastes nothing. Not a bed, not a moment, not a memory that might burden those who must go on. For those who notice, your disappearance is met with a brief, reflective pause, a glance, a nod, perhaps the quiet reshuffling of those who remain. Some may whisper a word or two, not in mourning, but in acknowledgement. The same way one might note the passing of a season or a change in the weather. The world outside remains utterly unchanged. The streets echo with the same noise, the river carries on its endless journey, and the city's relentless machinery continues to grind forward, oblivious. No one marks your name, no one records your story. In time, even those who once shared your silence will forget, the memory of your face fading as surely as your footprints in the city's mud. You vanish without legacy or trace, the space you leave behind quickly filled by another in need, another life beginning to end in the same anonymous fashion. In Shanghai, as in so many places, oblivion is not a tragedy, but a routine, a simple, silent changing of the mat. So your departure passes unnoticed, woven into the rhythm of the den and the city beyond. There is no judgment, no lament, no marker left behind. The world takes back what little was left, and you, like so many before, dissolve into its endless, indifferent flow. Your absence is registered only as a small vacancy in the den, a blank space where a body once lay, a brief flicker in the city's great machinery. Even before the mat is cold, life resumes its relentless pace. The den's attendants move briskly, preparing for the next customer. Out in the streets, nothing slows. The system that profited from your downfall never pauses to mourn or reconsider. It simply absorbs your vanishing and spins forward, driven by new cravings, fresh needs, another desperate face waiting in the shadows. The trade that first drew you in continues unabated. Ships still arrive on the river, their holds heavy with goods,
and with the raw ingredients of oblivion. The brokers and middlemen, their ledgers neat and hearts undisturbed, tally up the day's shipments, never noting the cost in ruined lives. Behind polished counters, the shopkeepers count their earnings, knowing full well how much of it is stained by the misery that seeps from the dens. Policemen, officials, and port inspectors, some in crisp uniforms, some with tired eyes and careful hands, all take their cut, their silence or complicity purchased a dozen times over before noon. The system is vast and adaptable, a network stretching from distant fields of poppy to the finest parlors and the darkest alleys. Respectable gentlemen in well-tailored suits sign contracts, host dinners, and make speeches about the city's progress, never mentioning the river of suffering that runs beneath the surface. Philanthropists fund hospitals and orphanages, their generosity quietly linked to fortunes made on addiction and despair. Clerks push papers across desks, clerics offer prayers, and families far away receive their share of profits, never glimpsing the faces behind the statistics. No part of the machine is immune. The city's splendor is built atop the silent labor of those it erases. For every vanished soul, there are a dozen more waiting, drawn by hope, undone by need, replaced as efficiently as a broken cog in a wheel. The profits are tallied and divided, the losses written off, and the next transaction already underway.
No one asks where you have gone. The den's corner is filled by a newcomer. The city's lights burn on, reflecting in the river's murk, illuminating another night of bargains struck and destinies altered. Your story, so urgent and overwhelming in its pain, dissolves into background noise, just one among thousands. The machine, merciless, tireless, perfectly engineered to feed on hope and ruin, keeps turning. Even as you are forgotten, the mechanism persists, sustained by a system that never notices its own violence. The names change, but the logic endures. As long as there is profit to be made from human longing, the wheel will never stop. Your passing is nothing but a small adjustment, a pause between transactions, a momentary silence swiftly replaced by the next cycle of trade and need. The city consumes and renews itself endlessly, its wealth and decay forever linked, spinning on and on, powered by the lives it quietly leaves behind. As the wheel turns and the city's machinery grinds on, Shanghai becomes a place haunted not by spirits from folklore, but by the silent multitudes whose lives and losses have been folded into its fabric. The city swells with new arrivals every day, faces fresh with hope, shoulders hunched with the first weight of disappointment, all swept up into the same relentless current. Yet beneath the noise and brightness, something lingers, an accumulation of absences, an invisible tide of memories that no one wants to name. The streets are crowded, but so many pass through like shadows, their stories erased before they are ever told. You sense it in the alleys at dawn, in the hush that settles over the den after a mat is replaced, in the fleeting glance of a shopkeeper who has learned to forget. The old neighborhoods change, rebuilt to suit new tastes, but the air itself seems thick with echoes, laughter that never quite reaches the surface, arguments fading before they begin, the faintest trace of longing that survives even after all hope is gone. There are places in Shanghai where the past presses in most tightly. In the crumbling courtyards behind foreign mansions, you see traces of those who once dreamed of belonging, their names scratched into door frames or painted over in hurried strokes. Along the docks, the voices of men and women who arrived with empty pockets and grand illusions seem to ride on the fog that rolls in from the river. Sometimes, a piece of music drifts from a window, stirring memories for just a moment before vanishing beneath the city's noise. No one speaks of the vanished directly. They are not mourned in public, nor do their names appear in any record kept by officials or priests. Yet their absence shapes everything.
the wary glance of a mother gathering her children indoors at dusk, the stubborn silence of a merchant who will not discuss certain topics, the hurried pace of those who cross the Bund at night, as if pursued by something they cannot see. Every den, every alley, every quiet corner of Shanghai is marked by a residue of lives that have ended quietly, anonymously, without remark. Even the city's splendor cannot hide these ghosts. The brightest lights on Nanjing Road only cast longer shadows. The newest towers rise atop the ruins of old dreams. Foreigners come and go, seeking fortunes or adventure, but the city holds on to their stories, letting them settle deep into the stones. It is said that Shanghai changes constantly, that nothing lasts here for long. But in truth, the city remembers everything. It just chooses not to look back. To walk its streets is to feel the press of all those who came before and found nothing but disappointment. Their presence is not a warning, not even a lesson, just a fact woven into the city's soul. For every bustling market or dazzling gala, there is an alley gone silent, a face glimpsed and forgotten, a name erased before it could matter. The cycle repeats, unbroken, and Shanghai endures, a city built as much from its forgotten dead as from the ambitions of the living. And so, as you watch the crowds move through the haze, you realize that everyone here is haunted in their own way. Some carry the ghosts of others. Some become ghosts themselves, living on only in the places they once moved through. Shanghai fills with both, the bodies that fill its rooms and the echoes that no one dares to remember, each destined to fade and be replaced, leaving only a whisper in the endless, restless air. Time moves forward, and with it the city's face changes. Streets are widened, new towers scrape the sky. The accents and uniforms in the crowd shift from one flag to another. The old dens are shuttered or repurposed, their velvet curtains pulled down, the last embers in their lamps allowed to cool. Yet, even as the details blur and fade, the machinery beneath persists, tireless and unchanged. The empire simply learns new tricks, speaks in a new language, finds a fresher alibi for the same old hunger. The form of the craving alters, the poppy's haze replaced by new vices, new comforts, new inventions for escaping pain or chasing meaning. The product changes name, price, and packaging, but the need it serves is as old as the city itself. The system adapts, quietly, skillfully, always ready to trade tomorrow for today, always eager to turn longing and loneliness into profit. It is not a matter of policy or culture, it is a force, invisible and persistent, threading itself through every generation, every name, every hand that reaches for relief. You, like all those who vanished before and all who will follow, are quickly forgotten. No one tells your story, not in the records, not in the laughter of the markets, not in the clamor of the clubs and parades that fill the city night after night. The mat you slept on has been swept clean, your face erased from memory. But the mechanism remains, just as it always has, as tireless as the tide and as merciless as time. In the end, the shape of the city's dependence is immortal, its hunger reborn in every new promise of escape. For each shattered hope, each story dissolved into the background noise, the system quietly resets itself, ready for the next arrival, the next longing, the next fate lost to the smoke. Empires rise and fall, powers trade hands, fortunes are built and squandered, but the cycle endures. Shanghai lives on, restless, shimmering, always hungry, its ghosts and its children bound together by a need that neither history nor forgetting can erase. So the wheel keeps turning, indifferent and unbroken. The city swallows and remakes itself again and again, each generation believing its struggle unique, each convinced it will be the last. Yet beneath the new facades, behind each rebranded indulgence and every fresh start, the truth persists. Oblivion is always for sale, and there will always be someone willing to pay the price.